Chapter 3329, Charm thousands, maybe tens of thousands of times harder? Jian Wushuang was also shocked by the number. He has now begun to deal with the fusion of the principles, but he is now only delving into the space-time and reincarnation of the two principles fusion. But even if it was just the fusion of two principles, it was still extremely difficult in his eyes. Even if because of the opportunity within the Bloodwave Temple, he had already reached the threshold of the fusion of these two principles, but he wanted to completely fuse them successfully, he still needed a certain amount of fortuitous encounters and a large amount of time. This was also because he had obtained the fortuitous encounters in Bloodwave Temple to begin with. In addition, his comprehension ability was exceptionally high. However, to ordinary cultivators, fusing the two principles was already as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Of the many principles masters in the divine beginning realm, there were very few who had truly fused the principles. Moreover, the reason why they were able to fuse the principles was because they had experienced countless years and relied on a large amount of time to slowly study them, only then did they fuse successfully. Fusing two principles was just like that. It was thousands to tens of thousands of times more difficult than fusing two principles. This concept was truly frightening. It is precisely because fusing four principles is too difficult that rulers are so rare. For example, the divine beginning realm only gave birth to a few more rulers because it was born for too long. Under normal circumstances, the primal chaos world would only give birth to a ruler after billions of years. For example, the closest ruler that was born in the divine beginning realm was also 8 billion years ago. The temporal temple continued to explain. Of course, the birth of a ruler is extremely difficult, but as long as one becomes a ruler, there will be a qualitative change. The power of the will alone. Once the four rules are fused, the power of the will will be hundreds of times stronger than the principles masters of the 6 void realms who have fused the 3 principles. The two are completely incomparable, not to mention the other aspects such as divine power and divine body. His willpower alone is hundreds of times stronger than the 6 void realms. Jian Wushuang was shocked, but then he frowned and said, "Since the Chaos Ruler is so much stronger than the Principle's Master, why can't I sense it in the previous battle? There's also Elder Dark Bone. He's only in the 6 void realms, but he can still fight against a Saint Realm Master. That's not hard to understand." Temporal Temple Master smiled. "First of all, you have to understand that a Master of the Saint Realm is a Master of the Saint Realm, and they are not rulers. They are just 3 of the 6 realms of the void who are lucky enough to obtain the power of the will of the heavenly Tao. They can't be compared to a real ruler. As for why they can be on the same level as a ruler, that's because they are in the divine beginning realm. In the divine beginning realm, because of the power of the will of the heavenly Tao, all rulers who have reached the ruler realm will be greatly restricted here. They can only display 10 to 20% of their power at most. But even so, in a one-on-one fight, any ruler can crush these 3 masters of the Saint Realm. Because of this, rulers like us rarely stay in the divine beginning realm. Because the restrictions here are too big, we can't open our hands and feet. So, for a long time, I choose to wander in the universe battlefield. In the universe battlefield, my power will not be restricted at all. That's how I feel at ease. However, if the 3 masters of the Saint Realm left the divine beginning realm and went to the universe battlefield, they would not be strengthened by the power of the will of the heavenly Tao. Instead, their strength would be weakened to the level of the 6 void realms and they would be even weaker than a ruler. Therefore, the 3 masters of the Saint Realm in the divine beginning realm have never left the divine beginning realm since they became masters of the Saint Realm. Is that so? Jian Wushuang understood. He had heard some rumors that the top experts in the divine beginning realm looked down on the 3 masters of the Saint Realm. Now it seemed that they had their reasons for looking down on them. Once the 3 masters of the Saint Realm left the divine beginning realm, their battle strength might not even be as strong as those top experts of the 6 void realms. "Oh, I'll give this back to you." Temporal Temple Master suddenly flipped his hand and took out a scroll that emitted an ancient aura. This scroll was the mountain river map. Looking at the mountain river map, Jian Wushuang's heart stirred. Previously, he had used all his strength to use the 2 dragons killing the heaven to heavily injure the Flame Saint Realm and the Sorcerer God. But after using it, His consciousness fell into a scheme and he quickly passed out. Not only did he not know what happened next, but he also did not know what happened next. He did not even have time to take back the mountain river map that had always existed in the void above him. If you have problems with this website, please continue reading your novel on our new website myboxnovel.com. Thanks. However, the temporal temple master brought back his mountain river map when he left. Thank you, temple master, Jian Wushuang quickly thanked him. The temporal temple master asked directly, little guy, who is Xianyi to you? Jian Wushuang was shocked, but he answered truthfully, he is my master. As expected. Temporal temple master stroked his beard and was not surprised. Temple master knows my master? Jian Wushuang looked at temporal temple master. Sort of. Temporal temple master smiled. Your master is a very important figure. Long ago, his existence shocked the entire divine beginning realm. As the temple master of the temporal temple, I naturally have dealings with him. Although I haven't had much contact with your master, I can tell that he is a very charismatic person. Charismatic? Jian Wushuang was stunned. Yes, he is unconventional, open-minded, and loyal. He can force people in desperate situations to drink and talk, and he can sacrifice himself for his good friend. He is clearly a top overlord of the divine beginning realm, but he can lower himself to talk to some weak cultivators as equals, the temporal temple master said. There was also a strange smile on his face. Of course, what I really admire about him is his strength and his spirit. Facing thousands of soldiers and countless experts, he didn't retreat even an inch. He fought against all living things. To be honest, in all my years of dominating the world, no one has ever impressed me from the bottom of my heart. Your master is the first. Hearing the words of the temporal temple master, Jian Wushuang was extremely shocked. He suddenly remembered a scroll he had seen by chance. In the scroll, his master, Xianyi, faced countless experts alone. He was already at the end of his rope, but his expression did not change. He fought to the death. The battle was so dark that his master had used up his last bit of strength and blood. Just like what the temporal temple master had said, it was a kind of spirit. A spirit that could fight the world and look down on all living things. In the divine beginning realm, other than his master, there was probably no one else who had this kind of spirit. Chapter 33:30, Origin of the Great War. Temple Master, since you know my master, you should know the origin of the Great War, right? Jian Wushuang asked. He had too many questions about the Great War. In that battle, 7-star mysterious sect was destroyed, and his master died. It could be said that the entire situation of the divine beginning realm was completely changed. However, Jian Wushuang did not know the origin of the battle or why it had erupted. Neither had his master told him about it. I do know something about the origin of the battle. Temporal Temple Master looked at Jian Wushuang and pondered for a moment before continuing, forget it. Now that you're dealing with a Saint Realm Master, you're qualified to know about it. The origin of that battle was because of your master Xianyi. Your master is not only powerful but also has a very high level of life and great potential. However, his life level is extremely fearful of the power of the will of heaven, which is completely unacceptable to the will of heaven. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes. He knew this very well. He was also a perfect level life form, and the heavenly Tao will of the divine beginning realm could not tolerate his existence. It had personally come to kill him countless times, and it had even made the 3 saint realms kill him at all costs. Your master was not tolerated by the heavenly Tao. This is the true origin of the battle. However, your master had already passed through the weak stage and reached the peak of the principal's master. His battle strength was comparable to that of an ordinary ruler, or even stronger. Moreover, before the battle broke out, your master was about to completely integrate 4 principles to become a ruler. Think about it. Before he broke through to the ruler realm, your master was already stronger than an ordinary ruler. How strong would he be when he becomes a ruler? Temporal Temple Master asked. Jian Wushuang was shocked. Through the conversation just now, Jian Wushuang had already understood the huge gap between a principal's master and a ruler. However, under such circumstances, his master was still able to fight against a ruler and even surpass an ordinary ruler. Apart from the huge innate advantage brought by his life level, his master must have some extraordinary strength and means. Under such circumstances, if his master broke through to become a ruler, his battle strength would definitely reach an even more incredible level. Unfortunately, the power of the will of heaven seems to know that your master will break through to become a ruler soon, so it launched the world-ending war before your master became a ruler. Temple Master said. The scale of the war was incredible. After all, not only is your master strong, but most importantly, he is also one of the founders of the Seven-Star Mysterious Sect. In the past, the 3 founders of the Seven-Star Mysterious Sect all had the combat strength of a ruler, and their experts were as numerous as clouds. They were publicly recognized as the number 1 force in the divine beginning realm. In front of the Seven-Star Mysterious Sect, even our Temple Master, the Heaven-Cleaving Alliance, and the Divine Ancestor Daoist Sect had to bow their heads. Jian Wushuang could not help feeling excited. At its peak, the Seven Stars Mysterious Sect was definitely the supreme overlord of the divine beginning realm. It was not something that the 3 Great Freedom Alliance and 3 Great Saint Realms could compare to. Just the 3 founders and 3 rulers alone, it was enough to hold everyone in awe. At that time, the power of the will of the heavenly Tao could only be mobilized by the 3 Great Saint Realms. However, it was impossible for the 3 Great Saint Realms to kill Xianyi by relying on the 3 Masters of the Saint Realm. Therefore, the 3 Great Saint Realms began to lobby the top forces in the Third Heaven. The top forces, such as the 4 Divine Clans and the Octagonal Heaven Sect, had suffered losses under the Seven-Star Mysterious Sect due to the Seven-Star Mysterious Sect's strong influence and the small-scale competition. Therefore, they could not help feeling jealous and resentful. This time, the 3 Saint Realms brought the will of heaven with them. Together with a series of threats and inducements, it was easy to pull them into a major alliance. Temple Master said. If you have problems with this website, please continue reading your novel on our new website myboxnovel.com. Thanks. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang frowned. Temple Master, according to what you said, the Seven-Star Mysterious Sect had 3 masters and so many experts. Even if the 3 Saint Realms and the top forces in the Third Heaven joined forces, they might not be able to fight against the Seven-Star Mysterious Sect, right? You're right. Even if the 3 Saint Realms and so many forces joined forces, the odds of winning against the Seven-Star Mysterious Sect are still slim. No one in the 3 Saint Realms can fight against the 3 Masters alone. The reason why the 3 Saint Realms dared to attack was that they had the help of experts from the universe, Temple Master said. What? Jian Wushuang was shocked. An expert from the universe came to help. Not an expert from the divine beginning realm? Someone from the outside world? Yes. Temple Master nodded. There were several experts who came from the universe, and each of them had the battle strength of a ruler. Most importantly, they brought a unique supreme treasure. Supreme treasure? What supreme treasure? Jian Wushuang asked. A spear with special power is the one that killed your master. Otherwise, even if a few rulers joined hands, they could at most suppress your master, but they would not be able to kill him, Temple Master said. Jian Wushuang was shocked. A perfect grade life form had extremely strong life-saving abilities and endless divine power. Under normal circumstances, since his master Xian Yi already had the battle strength of a ruler, as long as his strength was not completely crushed, it was almost impossible for the opponent to kill him. Even if there were several of them working together, it was also difficult to do so. But if the opponent used that extremely special treasure... Spear. Jian Wushuang's eyes suddenly focused. He had already remembered the scene he had seen when his master was surrounded by countless experts. It was the spear that had pierced his master's chest, making him look like a desperate situation. With the help of those foreign masters, he had completely surpassed the Seven-Star Mysterious Sect in terms of strength at the highest level. Therefore, the world-ending war broke out. Although I did not participate in the earth-shattering battle, I watched from afar. In that battle, your master, Xian Yi, was ultimately suppressed by those foreign masters. In the end, he was killed by the spear. However, your master is indeed very powerful. Even before he died, he still used his power to forcefully devour the divine powers of countless experts on the battlefield and set up heaven-sealing formation to completely seal off the 7-star divine territory where the 7-star mysterious sect used to be. Chapter 33-31. External threats. Jian Wushuang had already fallen silent. Although he did not know the origin and process of the battle, he had long known the outcome of the battle. In that battle, the 7-star mysterious sect was defeated and the entire 7-star divine realm was reduced to ruins. Countless experts fell asleep. Fortunately, at the last moment, his master Xian Yi used a heaven-reaching method to completely seal the entire 7-star divine realm. Only then did he preserve the 7-star mysterious sect's inheritance, and at the same time, he created a chance for the 7-star mysterious sect to turn the tables. And he was also born in the 7-star divine realm that was completely sealed. After that battle, the 7-star mysterious sect completely became history, and the 3 great divine realms replaced the position of the 7-star mysterious sect, becoming the new overlord of the divine beginning realm. They even surpassed our 3 great freedom alliance. However, that was also because the few overlords from outside were still in the divine beginning realm. Not long after the battle ended, the foreign overlords left. The 3 saint realms did not have real overlords, so they were not as intimidating as before. Therefore, the 3 freedom alliances were on equal footing with the 3 saint realms. To a certain extent, the 3 freedom alliances were stronger than the 3 saint realms, Temporal Temple Master said. Is that so? Jian Wushuang understood. After his conversation with the Temporal Temple Master, he had learned more about the world-ending war. However, there were also questions, such as why the power of the will of heaven could not tolerate their existence. Was it simply because of their lives? Also, why did those foreign rulers come and even brought special treasures that could kill his master, Xian Yi? He could not explain these questions, and Temporal Temple Master obviously did not know. He could only wait for his strength to grow in the future and then slowly explore. Little guy, you are Xian Yi's disciple. If I'm not wrong, your life level should be equal to your master's. Aren't you the legendary perfect level life? Temporal Temple Master looked at Jian Wushuang. Senior, do you know about the perfect level life form? Jian Wushuang asked in surprise. Of course. I have been in the universe battlefield for many years, so I have some knowledge. I have heard about the classification of the special life forms, and the perfect level life form is known as the supreme life form. Even in the vast universe, such a life form is as rare as a phoenix feather or a Chilean horn. Under normal circumstances, it is only possible for a perfect level life form to appear in thousands of chaos worlds. No one in the divine beginning realm had a perfect life form before your master. It is reasonable for a perfect level life form to suddenly appear. However, you and your master were obviously born in the divine beginning realm, and they were both perfect level life forms. This is a little unbelievable. Temporal Temple Master's expression was a little strange. Jian Wushuang's heart skipped a beat. His master and he were both at the perfect level of life, and they were both born in the divine beginning realm. But the difference was that his master had created his perfect level life with great magic power. Temporal Temple Master would never have thought of this, and Jian Wushuang did not intend to say it out loud. After all, it would be too shocking to say that someone had created a perfect level life. Although I don't know why you can have a perfect grade life form, you will inevitably face the same situation as your master. That is, the heavenly axiom will not allow it. This can be seen from the 3 saint realms' repeated attacks on you and the arrival of the power of the heavenly axiom's will, Temporal Temple Master said. Yes. Jian Wushuang nodded solemnly. In the previous battle, the 3 saint realms had set up an inescapable net to kill you. Even the 3 masters of the saint realm and the sorcerer god had personally come to kill you, but they were still unable to kill you. This means that the 3 saint realms' power alone will not be able to do anything to you, so, Temporal Temple Master's expression became solemn. If you have problems with this website, please continue reading your novel on our new website myboxnovel.com. Thanks. Temple Master, are you saying that there will also be a ruler-level expert from the outside world who will come to the divine beginning realm to kill me? Jian Wushuang asked. It's hard to say, but there is a possibility, Temporal Temple Master said. Jian Wushuang's heart also became heavy. He knew very well that his current strength was at most at the third realm of the Void Realm. Even if he used many trump cards, he would only be able to fight against the fourth realm of the Void Realm. However, if he fought against a Saint Realm Master or even a ruler-level expert, he would not be able to resist at all. The reason why he was able to fight against the Flame Saint Master and the Sorcerer God in that battle was because he had received the power given to him by Bloodwave. Bloodwave had given him the power at the cost of the collapse of the Bloodwave realm. After giving him the power once, there was absolutely no way to give him the power a second time. He could only rely on himself. Even my master, who was at his peak, could only die in the face of the attacks of several rulers from the outside world. Compared to my master now, I'm definitely not a bit inferior. Jian Wushuang frowned. He felt tremendous pressure. Little guy, don't be too nervous. First of all, there might not be any masters from the outside world arriving. Second, even if the masters from the outside world know of your existence and want to kill you, it will take them a long time to arrive at the divine beginning realm from their own chaotic world. If I'm not mistaken, it will take at least thousands of years or even tens of thousands of years for the overlords to reach the divine beginning realm. It might even take hundreds of thousands of years for them to arrive. Such a long period of time should be enough for you to do a lot of things, Temporal Temple Master said with a smile. Upon hearing this, Jian Wushuang heaved a sigh of relief. If the overlords from the outside world could reach the divine beginning realm in just a few decades or hundreds of years, there was really nothing he could do. However, if it was a long time, tens of thousands of years would be a lot of opportunities for him. Tens of thousands of years was already a long time for Jian Wushuang. After all, it had only been 1,000 years since he was born. In such a short period of time, he had already stood at the peak of the divine beginning realm, and his strength was comparable to a principal's master of the three void realms. If he was given thousands of years or tens of thousands of years, who knew what level he would have reached? He might even have become a ruler. Of course, these were all Jian Wushuang's own expectations. Moreover, he could not be sure when the experts from the outside world would arrive. He did not know what level he could reach at that time, so he could only take one step at a time. Little guy, I know that you are very talented in space-time. Not only did you comprehend the space-time divine skill from the space-time gold stone I left behind, but you also integrated my space-time divine skill into your swordsmanship. This is indeed rare, Temporal Temple Master suddenly said. Jian Wushuang immediately looked at Temporal Temple Master. Chapter 33-32, The Temple of Principles. Your talent in the space-time principles is so high that I should take you as my disciple under normal circumstances. Unfortunately, I have lived for so many years and seen too many things. I have already given up on taking you as my disciple. Moreover, you are already Xian Yi's disciple. Although Xian Yi is dead, I have no intention of taking him as my disciple, Temporal Temple Master said. Jian Wushuang looked calm. He had heard from Temple Master Bai Xing that the Temple Master had already given up on taking him in as a disciple. He had never expected that the Temple Master would take him in as a disciple. However, although I can't take you in as a disciple, I can give you some guidance on the space-time principles, Temporal Temple Master said with a smile. I've carefully checked your current physical condition. If nothing unexpected happens, you won't be able to condense a trace of divine power within 300 years. In other words, you won't have much strength during these 300 years, let alone fighting with others. However, these 300 years won't affect your comprehension of the principles and the application of the principles. So, if you're willing, you can stay by my side for the next 300 years and cultivate in this independent space. What do you think? Jian Wushuang was overjoyed when he heard the Temple Master's words. He nodded without hesitation and said, Temple Master, I'm willing. Of course, Jian Wushuang was willing. What kind of existence was the Temple Master? No one in the divine beginning realm could compare to him in terms of space-time principles alone. It was extremely difficult for others to come into contact with such a super expert. Even some of the higher-ups of the Temporal Temple, people like Temple Master Bai Xing, B.A. Kang, and others could not meet the Temporal Temple Master just because they wanted to, let alone stay by his side all the time. In the divine beginning realm, there were countless experts, but many powerful principles masters were also eager to seek guidance from the temporal temple master because the temporal temple master could give them a little guidance on the principles of space and time. It was a great help to these masters of principles, but the temporal temple master could not be bothered to give them any guidance. If he could cultivate by the temporal temple master's side, the temporal temple master would not be stingy with his guidance. It would benefit any cultivator who was proficient in the principles of space and time. It could be said that cultivating by the temporal temple master's side was a dream opportunity for countless cultivators. But now, the temporal temple master had given this opportunity to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang was not stupid. Of course, he knew that this was a rare opportunity, so how could he refuse it? Well, in these 300 years, I will arrange your cultivation so that you can make the greatest progress during the 300 years when divine power cannot be condensed. After 300 years, when your strength recovers, I will leave the divine beginning realm and continue to explore the universe battlefield. The rest of your journey will be up to you, Temporal Temple Master said. Thank you, Temple Master. Jian Wushuang thanked him profusely. In the past 300 years, besides staying by my side and cultivating according to my arrangements, there are 15 principles temples on my island. They should be of great help to you, Bai Xing. Temporal Temple Master glanced at the void beside him. Temple Master. Temple Master Bai Xing's figure appeared directly. Take this little girl to the Principal's temple, Temporal Temple Master instructed. Yes. Temple Master Bai Xing nodded respectfully. Jian Wushuang immediately followed Temple Master Bai Xing. If you have problems with this website, please continue reading your novel on our new website myboxnovel.com. Thanks. After walking out of the independent space where Temporal Temple Master lived, Jian Wushuang and Temple Master Bai Xing walked side by side on the Sohar Island. Little girl, Temple Master Bai Xing had just opened her mouth, but she immediately stopped. That's not right. Although you're still an immortal saint, your real combat strength is stronger than that of an ordinary principles master. You're on the same level as me. It doesn't seem appropriate for me to call you little girl. I'll just call you by your name. Heavenly Sword Marquis, what did Temple Master tell you just now? Temple Master Bai Xing asked curiously. Nothing much. He just told me about the difference in strength between a ruler and a principles master, as well as some things about the 3 saint realms. In addition, Temple Master wants me to cultivate by his side for the next 300 years, Jian Wushuang said. He did not mention his master and the 7-star mysterious sect. What? Temple Master Bai Xing was shocked. Temple Master wants you to cultivate by his side for 300 years. Yes. Jian Wushuang nodded. Temple Master Bai Xing immediately praised him. Heavenly Sword Marquis, I have to say that you're really lucky. Temple Master had made up his mind many years ago not to accept any more disciples. This time, he didn't make an exception when he met you, but he asked you to cultivate by his side. Our temporal temple has been established for a long time. Although there have been countless experts who are good at spacetime principles, there are probably no more than 20 of them who have received personal guidance from Temple Master. Moreover, Temple Master has only given them some simple guidance once or twice, but there hasn't been anyone who can cultivate by Temple Master's side until now. Tut tut, if you can cultivate with the Temple Master, even if you are the Temple Master's personal disciple, you won't get the same treatment. You are really lucky this time. Ah! Jian Wushuang was stunned at first, but then he nodded slightly. Indeed, it was really lucky that he could cultivate with the Temple Master for 300 years. Temple Master Bai Xing, Temple Master wants me to go to the Temple of Principles. The Temple of Principles should be the palace complex that you pointed out to me, right? Jian Wushuang changed the subject. Jian Wushuang remembered that when he had just arrived on the Sohar Island, Temple Master Bai Xing had brought him to several fortuitous places on the island. However, there was one place that Temple Master Bai Xing pointed out to him but did not bring him in. It was a group of palaces. According to Temple Master Bai Xing, the threshold of the palaces was extremely high. Even an ordinary principles master of the 1st or 2nd realm of the Void Realm was not qualified to enter. In order to enter, one usually needed to master more than 2 rules. Since the threshold was so high, It was obvious that the palaces were extraordinary. You guessed right. The group of palaces that I pointed out to you is where the principal's temple is located. As for the purpose of the principal's temple, can't you guess it? Temple Master Bai Xing looked at Jian Wushuang with interest. Of course, the principal's temple is aimed at the rules, but the threshold is so high. Obviously, it's not only aimed at the space-time principles. If nothing goes wrong, the purpose of the principal's temple should be to integrate the principles, right? Jian Wushuang said. Chapter 33-33, Affinity Test Smart. Temple Master Bai Xing smiled. There are a total of 16 principles temples. Apart from the other one which is used for the affinity test, the other 15 are all for fusing another principle with the spacetime principles. Cultivating in the principles temple might not guarantee that you'll be able to fuse these two principles, but at least it's much easier than comprehending them yourself. These 15 temples focus on the fusion of principles, including destruction and spacetime, life and death and spacetime, life and spacetime, thunder and spacetime, and so on. Heavenly Sword Marquis, I know that apart from the spacetime principles, the second principle you have comprehended is the samsara principles. Among these 15 temples, there is one that combines the samsara and spacetime principles, which you can use. The fusion of spacetime and reincarnation? Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up. The fusion of spacetime principles and reincarnation principles were two different principles. When he was in the Bloodwave Temple, he had barely found the key points of the fusion. He had already entered the rudiments of the fusion of the two principles. What he needed next was a lot of time to constantly adapt and study them. Now, if the principles temple that corresponded to spacetime and reincarnation was really helpful to the integration of the two principles, it would definitely save him a lot of time. Let's go to the principles temple now, Jian Wushuang said. Although there were 15 principles temples for the integration of principles, he did not need the other principles temples for the time being. Only the principles temple that corresponded to spacetime and reincarnation was useful to him. It would be of great use to him. Don't worry, before you go to the principles temple, you have to test your affinity for the principles. Temple Master Bai Xing said. Rule affinity? Jian Wushuang was puzzled. There are all kinds of principles between heaven and earth, and I don't need to explain how useful these principles are to cultivators. Every cultivator has a different affinity with the principles between heaven and earth. This affinity represents whether he has the talent and qualification to comprehend this principle. Take you for example. You have been comprehending the spacetime principles and the samsara principles at a very fast speed and have a very high talent. This means that you have a very high affinity with these two principles. Only in this way can you comprehend these two principles so quickly. But if it were other principles, such as you comprehending the life-death principles, the same perception, the same opportunity, and the same time, the achievements you can achieve in the life-death principles might not necessarily be able to achieve your achievements in the spacetime principles and the samsara principles, Temple Master Bai Xing said. I see. The affinity is equivalent to the talent for meditating on various principles. Only when the affinity is high, the speed of meditating on the corresponding principles will be faster. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly. He could understand what Temple Master Bai Xing meant by affinity. He could understand. Yes, the affinity with the principles determines whether you have the qualification and talent to study this principle. You can comprehend the principles of spacetime and reincarnation in such a short time, which means that you have a very high affinity with these two principles. If you are an ordinary immortal saint, then you don't need to care about your affinity with the principles of heaven and earth. But you are not ordinary. Temple Master Bai Xing continued to explain. You already have the battle strength of the three realms of void, but you have already grasped the power of will. The strength of the principles master depends largely on the power of will. As for the way to obtain the power of will, the most important thing is to grasp more principles or to integrate more principles. You have already grasped one principle, and it won't be long before you grasp two principles. In the future, you must find a way to grasp the third or even the fourth principle. Naturally, You must now figure out which principles are suitable for you to comprehend so that you can make corresponding preparations in advance. Jian Wushuang suddenly understood. Yes, it was enough for him to master the principles of spacetime and reincarnation. However, once he reached the level of principles master, he had to find a way to master more principles. At this time, he had to figure out which principles were suitable for him to comprehend. Heavenly Sword Marquis, come with me. Temple Master Bai Xing led Jian Wushuang to the building complex of the Principles Temple and directly entered the temple at the front. There were all kinds of air currents in the magnificent temple. These air currents represented the principles of heaven and earth. At a glance, there were at least hundreds of such air currents. Jian Wushuang could immediately sense the existence of the spacetime principles and reincarnation principles from these air currents. Temple Master Bai Xing, what should I do? Jian Wushuang asked. If you have problems with this website, please continue reading your novel on our new website myboxnovel.com. Thanks. It's simple. You just sit here with your legs crossed, close your eyes and try your best to communicate with the surrounding principles power, Temple Master Bai Xing said. I understand. Jian Wushuang nodded and immediately sat down in the center of the hall according to Temple Master Bai Xing's instructions. Then he closed his eyes and began to communicate with the airflow that represented the principle's power. An hour passed in the blink of an eye. During this 1 hour, the air currents in the hall surrounded Jian Wushuang. Among the air currents, a few of them emitted light, some dazzling and some dim. Well, you can open your eyes now, Temple Master Bai Xing said. Jian Wushuang immediately opened his eyes and saw the airflow that was emitting light. These glowing airflow should be the principle's power that has a high affinity with me, right? Jian Wushuang said, because he had noticed the most dazzling airflow among these glowing airflow, it was the airflow that represented the spacetime principles. Yes, the more dazzling these glows are, the more affinity you have with this principle. Without a doubt, your affinity with the spacetime principles is the highest. As for the reincarnation principles, it is slightly inferior to the spacetime principles, but its affinity is still very high. In addition, your affinity with the earth principles, the gold principles, and the fate principles is also good. You can find a way to understand these principles in the future. But what surprised me the most was the principles of destruction. Heavenly Sword Marquis, I didn't expect your talent in the principles of destruction to be so high. It's not much weaker than yours in the spacetime principles, Temple Master Bai Xing said with a hint of surprise. Jian Wushuang immediately looked at one of the equally dazzling airflow that was comparable to the airflow of the spacetime principles. That airflow represented the destruction principles. Chapter 33-34, The Fusion Process I didn't expect my affinity with the destruction principles to be so high. Jian Wushuang was also surprised. It was not that he had not been exposed to the destruction principles. After all, he had met many experts who were good at the destruction principles. However, even though he had come into contact with the principles of destruction, he had never tried to comprehend it. After all, the principles of spacetime and the principles of reincarnation were enough for him to study. He did not have the time and energy to study other principles. Because he had never tried, he subconsciously thought that he was not suitable to study the principles of destruction. But in the end, his affinity with the principles of destruction was not weaker than his own principles of spacetime. The light is so dazzling, and your affinity with the destruction principles is much higher than your affinity with the samsara principles. It would be a pity if you don't comprehend the destruction principles, Temple Master Bai Xing said. I didn't know that I had the talent to comprehend the destruction principles. Now that I know it, after I have mastered the samsara principles, the next thing I want to comprehend is the destruction principles, Jian Wushuang said with a smile. A cultivator, even a principles master, has limited energy. Under normal circumstances, principles masters can only choose 4 rules to comprehend. You have already comprehended 2 principles. If you want to comprehend the destruction principles as the next principle, you can choose 3 principles. As for the 4th principles, you have a good affinity with the earth principles, the gold principles, and the fate principles. You can choose one of them to comprehend, Temple Master Bai Xing said. A principles master could only become a ruler if he had comprehended 4 principles and completely fused them. Therefore, Jian Wushuang had to comprehend 4 principles as well. Now that he had 3 principles, space-time, reincarnation, and destruction, the only principles left was, there's no rush. I'm still far from mastering the samsara principles and destruction principles, let alone fusing all 3 principles. I'll consider choosing the 4th principle after I've comprehended and fused all 3 principles, Jian Wushuang muttered. It's up to you. Let's go. I'll take you to the principles temple. Immediately, Temple Master Baixing brought Jian Wushuang to the principles temple that focused on spacetime and reincarnation. As soon as they entered the principles temple, Jian Wushuang immediately sensed the 2 different principles that filled the entire temple. These 2 principles were the spacetime principles and the samsara principles, and both were very strong. Heavenly Sword Marquis, you can sit down and slowly feel it with your heart. Soon, you will be able to feel some strange things in this temple, Temple Master Baixing said. Jian Wushuang nodded and sat down cross-legged according to Temple Master Baixing's instructions. He began to feel it with his heart. In his senses, the power of 2 different principles that filled the temple began to slowly merge. Yes, the reason why the principles temple was unique was that there was a process of merging 2 different principles in the principles temple. What Jian Wushuang saw now was the process of merging the spacetime principles and the samsara principles. From the beginning to the end, the 2 principles completely merged into one. Jian Wushuang saw it clearly. I saw a complete cycle of heavenly Tao in the Bloodwave Temple, which also included the merging of various principles. Unfortunately, I spent most of my energy on mastering the spacetime principles and the samsara principles. As for the merging of the 2 principles, although I studied it for a while, it was too short and didn't involve much. Now, the principles temple is purely a fusion process of the 2 principles of spacetime and reincarnation. The fusion process is clearer and more detailed than what I saw in Bloodwave Temple, so it will be more helpful to me. Jian Wushuang was pleasantly surprised. He only needed a simple scan to understand how helpful the principles temple was to him. He had already barely taken that step in the fusion of the 2 principles of spacetime and reincarnation, and could be considered to have entered the rudiments. Under such circumstances, if he could cultivate in the principles temple, then his progress in the fusion of the 2 principles would definitely be huge. It would not be long before he could truly fuse the 2 principles together. If you have problems with this website, please continue reading your novel on our new website myboxnovel.com. Thanks. Heavenly Sword Marquis, you stay here and meditate. I have something to do, so I'll leave first. If Temple Master has any instructions, I'll let you know, Temple Master Baixing said. Thank you, Temple Master Baixing, Jian Wushuang thanked him. Temple Master Baixing waved his hand and left quickly. Jian Wushuang was the only one left in the huge principles temple. Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged in the center of the temple. He closed his eyes and began to meditate quietly. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. During these 10 days, Jian Wushuang stayed in the principles temple. By watching the fusion process of the 2 principles and studying them, he had improved a lot in the fusion of the 2 principles of spacetime and reincarnation. However, Jian Wushuang did not stay any longer. After all, the principles temple had always been on Soha Island. As long as he had time, he could cultivate in the principles temple. However, the temple master did not stay on Soha Island all the time. Now, he had the opportunity to cultivate with the temple master. Of course, he did not want to miss the 300 years. In the independent space where the temple master lived, Jian Wushuang stood respectfully in an ordinary manner. The temple master was holding a kettle in front of him and watering a young sapling that had just sprouted. Temporal temple master was very familiar with both the kettle and the watering. He was very calm, no different from an ordinary person. Jian Wushuang saw all of this. Little guy, guess what I'm doing? Temporal temple master turned to look at Jian Wushuang after watering the sapling. Temple master, you must be planting a tree, Jian Wushuang replied. How long has this tree been growing? Temporal temple master asked again. This tree, Jian Wushuang looked at the sapling carefully. In his eyes, The sapling was very ordinary and nothing special. It was obviously an ordinary sapling that could be seen everywhere in the world. Jian Wushuang could clearly sense the vitality of the sapling. Judging from its vitality, this sapling should have been planted less than 10 days ago. If I'm not mistaken, it must have been planted after you returned to the divine beginning realm, Temple Master, Jian Wushuang answered truthfully. Oh, really? Temporal Temple Master said with a faint smile, then take a look at it now. After saying that, Temporal Temple Master sprinkled the kettle in his hand on the sapling. In an instant, the sapling began to change. Chapter 33-35, Spacetime Conversion in the manner, under Jian Wushuang's gaze, the ordinary little sapling that had just shown its leaves began to grow at an incredible speed. In the blink of an eye, it had turned into a towering tree, and it was still growing. Its branches were luxuriant and luxuriant. Hualala! The trunk extended, and the entire tree was like a huge mushroom vine, covering the entire manor. In the end, it even covered the entire independent space. At this time, the diameter of the tree had already exceeded hundreds of meters. An extremely ancient aura emanated from the tree. Jian Wushuang stared at the tree in front of him in astonishment. He could also sense the vitality of the tree and thus determine its age. However, the current age of the tree was definitely more than 10 million years old. This was an ancient tree that had lived for more than 10 million years. How could this be? Jian Wushuang was extremely shocked. It's simple. This is the original appearance of the sapling. However, in order to make it easier for me to irrigate it and to not attract too much attention, I used time conversion to keep it in the sapling stage, Temporal Temple Master said. Time conversion? Jian Wushuang was stunned and asked, what is time conversion? Time conversion is the conversion of two things of different time periods. For example, this tree has lived for tens of millions of years, but after time conversion, it still looks like a sapling. Similarly, after time conversion, a sapling can also turn into an ancient tree that is tens of millions of years old. The Temporal Temple Master explained. The principles of time and space are profound and profound. After mastering the principles of time and space, the next step is to improve the application of the principles of time and space. The first step in the application of the principles of time and space is the conversion of time and space. The conversion of time and space is one of the methods of the conversion of time and space. This conversion can only be used on inanimate objects such as mountains and lands. As for the conversion of time and space to life, that is a higher level method. In addition to time conversion, there is also space conversion. This space conversion is even easier to demonstrate. Look. Temporal Temple Master waved his hand. The independent space they were in was originally a manor, but in the blink of an eye, it had turned into a huge plain. The plain was clear and full of vitality. Temporal Temple Master waved his hand again, and the plain disappeared. In its place was an endless sea. Jian Wushuang's expression changed. From the manor to the plain and then to the sea, everything was within Temporal Temple Master's control. This method immediately reminded Jian Wushuang of the secret skill of the mountain and river map, the Thousand Treasures Great World. The Thousand Treasures Great World contained many worlds, and each world had its own characteristics and were different. The Thousand Treasures Great World changed according to Jian Wushuang's will. You have the map of mountains and rivers. The world of treasures in the map is actually a kind of world transformation. You should be able to understand the space transformation more easily, Temple Master Baixing said. Indeed. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly, but he immediately asked in puzzlement, Temple Master, although the space-time transformation is very strange, it shouldn't be very useful in a fight, whether it's time transformation or space transformation, right? It's not very useful. The Temple Master nodded. Time-space conversion is only the most rudimentary use of the space-time principles. After mastering the space-time conversion, one can truly step into the threshold of using the space-time principles. As for in a real battle, there is almost no need to use the space-time conversion. However, after you master the space-time conversion, the biggest use is not the space-time conversion, but your use of the space-time principles has reached a new level. The difference is still very big. Temporal Temple Master smiled and continued, "Little guy, now that you have completely mastered the principles of spacetime, how many principles of spacetime do you think you can use now?" "All of them, of course. I can use all the power of the principles of spacetime around me," Jian Wushuang said. "That's right. Since you can use all the power of the principles of spacetime around you, and the power of the principles of spacetime between heaven and earth is endless, why do different people control the power of the principles of spacetime differently?" Temple Master Bai Xing looked at Jian Wushuang with interest. "If you have problems with this website, please continue reading your novel on our new website myboxnovel.com. Thanks." "This," Jian Wushuang frowned and said, "this is the different application of the principles of time and space." "Yes, it is the application. To give a simple example, two people draw water from the same river. One of them draws water from a bowl. He can only draw water back and forth bowl by bowl. How much water can he draw back from the river? The other person is using a bucket to fetch water back and forth. Although it's still insignificant to the river, the amount of water that he can fetch back is far from what the first person can compare to. The spacetime principles that we know is that river. It's endless, and no matter how you use it, it can be used by you. But the difference is that the tool that we use to fetch water is the use of the spacetime principles. Right now, your use of the spacetime principles is very shallow, and it's still at the most basic stage. You're just like the person who uses a water bowl to fetch water. The spacetime principles that can be used at one time is only a small bowl. As for a master of spacetime conversion, he is equivalent to a person who uses a bucket to fetch water. Although he still uses relatively simple tools, a bucket of water is much more than a bowl of water. Therefore, after mastering the spacetime conversion, the power of spacetime principles that he can use immediately will be greatly enhanced under normal circumstances. When two cultivators who have comprehended the spacetime principles use the same spacetime techniques, the power of the cultivator who has mastered the spacetime transformation is at least 10 times stronger than that of the cultivator who has not. This is the difference. At this point, the temple master finally stopped and looked at Jian Wushuang. "I understand." Jian Wushuang looked as if he had suddenly realized something. After mastering the spacetime transformation, the technique of the spacetime transformation is not important. What is important is that the use of the power of the spacetime principles will be much stronger. "That's right." The temporal temple master smiled. "Temple master, according to what you said, the time-space conversion is only a superficial method of using the time-space principles. Then what is it after the time-space conversion?" Jian Wushuang asked curiously. The time-space conversion is the first stage of the use of time-space. This stage is very long. More than 99% of the cultivators in the divine beginning realm who are good at time-space stay in this stage. As for the second stage, it is time-space imprisonment. Chapter 33-36, 300 years spacetime imprisonment. Jian Wushuang's expression changed. He was no stranger to spacetime imprisonment. He had mastered spacetime teleportation and had a strong life-saving ability. Only by using spacetime imprisonment could he defeat him. The three Saint Realms had been prepared for the battle on Soha Island. They had asked Master Qingyang to use spacetime imprisonment from the beginning, not giving him a chance to escape. The spacetime imprisonment can only be used by experts who use the spacetime principles. "I heard from Temple Master Bai Xing that there are no more than 20 people in the divine beginning realm who can use the spacetime imprisonment," Jian Wushuang said. "Yes, the spacetime conversion can only be regarded as a shallow use of the spacetime principles, but at the level of the spacetime imprisonment, the use of the spacetime principles is already considered good. Such people are indeed not big in the divine beginning realm, so it's normal that there are no more than 20 of them." Temporal Temple Master nodded slightly. After mastering the spacetime imprisonment, the next step is to master the third stage of the application of the spacetime principles, the spacetime flow rate. Flow rate. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes. Is it the same as the spacetime tower? The time flow rate in the three-story spacetime tower was completely different from that in the outside world. In the first story of the spacetime tower, the time flow rate was 10 times slower than that in the outside world, and in the second story, it was 100 times slower. In the third story, the time flow rate was 1,000 times slower, which was incredible. The characteristics of the space-time tower were clearly the same as the space-time flow that the temporal temple master had mentioned. The space-time tower can be considered as such. However, the space-time tower only purely changes the flow of time. On the other hand, the real flow of time and space can change together. There are still some differences between the two. The temporal temple master smiled. Actually, in the divine beginning realm, many experts who specialize in the principles of spacetime can simply change the flow of time. However, they can only barely change the flow of time in a small area. Not only is the area small, but it can only be maintained for a short period of time. It cannot be sustained at all. However, experts who have truly grasped the move of the flow of time and space can turn the flow of time in a piece of space into eternity. They can even refine it into a treasure. Just like the space-time tower, I refined it myself. The flow of time in it is completely stable and can continue. Jian Wushuang understood. Temple Master, the flow of time and space is only the third stage of the application of the spacetime rule. What about the fourth stage? Jian Wushuang asked curiously. The fourth stage, that is a higher level of application. Unfortunately, even I am far from being able to reach that level. Even if I tell you, it is useless. In the divine beginning realm, if you can reach the third stage of the application of the spacetime principles and master the flow of time and space, it will be very impressive, Temple Master said. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. Apparently, the temporal temple master was also in the third stage of mastering the flow of time and space. In this way, the temporal temple master was already the one who had the highest understanding of the principles of time and space in the history of the divine beginning realm. However, Jian Wushuang had not even reached the rudiments of the principles of time and space. Even if he knew the fourth stage, it would be useless. Little guy, you have been staying here for the past 300 years. I will teach you the use of the spacetime principles according to your progress. If you encounter any problems that you don't understand, you can take the initiative to ask. With your talent in the spacetime principles, under my guidance, although you won't be able to reach the stage of spacetime imprisonment in the past 300 years, it shouldn't be difficult for you to master the spacetime transformation. Work hard, Temporal Temple Master said. Yes, thank you, Temple Master. Jian Wushuang was pleasantly surprised. From that day on, Jian Wushuang spent most of his time in this independent space. He followed Temporal Temple Master, sometimes watching him plant trees, sometimes meditating on his own, and sometimes asking for advice from Temporal Temple Master. Temporal Temple Master was not stingy with him. Whenever he asked a question, he would guide and answer it in various ways, either directly or indirectly. Under such circumstances, Jian Wushuang's application of the principles of spacetime had been improving at an alarming rate. If you have problems with this website, please continue reading your novel on our new website myboxnovel.com. Thanks. Spring went to the east, and time continued to pass. 300 years was insignificant to the divine beginning realm, which had existed for an unknown number of years. For an ancient existence like Temporal Temple Master, 300 years passed in a snap of the fingers. He simply planted trees a few times, let alone 300 years, 30,000 years would pass easily. However, to Jian Wushuang, these 300 years were very precious. He did not dare to waste any time during these 300 years. He had been cultivating wholeheartedly. Now, the 300 years had finally passed. He was still in the manor in the independent space. Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged on the empty ground with his eyes slightly closed. The surroundings were calm and peaceful. At this moment, Jian Wushuang's expression changed. He slowly extended his right arm and opened his palm. There was a faint white light in the center of his palm. This white light was extremely sharp. It was a sword essence. Sword essence. This was Jian Wushuang's sword essence condensed from his own sword principle. At first, it was extremely weak, as if it would be extinguished at any time. But soon, the light of the sword shadow became brighter and more dazzling. The size of the sword essence kept increasing, and in the blink of an eye, it formed a 3-foot sword shadow. After the 3-foot sword shadow was formed, it did not stop there. Instead, it continued to enlarge. It was clearly a sword shadow, but it suddenly turned into a sword river in Jian Wushuang's hand and spread out. The sword river disappeared, and then a towering sword mountain appeared. After that, the sword shadow evolved into various things. After a long time, the sword shadow disappeared, and Jian Wushuang opened his eyes. Temple Master. After opening his eyes, Jian Wushuang immediately stood up and bowed respectfully to the figure in front of him. Sword essence evolves everything. Have you reached the 3rd realm of sword principle? Temporal Temple Master looked at Jian Wushuang with interest. Yes. Jian Wushuang nodded. Jian Wushuang had already reached the 3rd realm of sword principle. He had already reached the 2nd realm, boundless sword tree. His boundless sword skill had already reached the limit of the 2nd stage of sword principle when he was in the Bloodwave realm. After returning to the time-space island, he had cultivated in this independent space for 300 years. Although he focused most of his energy on the application of the space-time principles, the principles were used in conjunction with sword principle. While studying the application of the principles, he also took into account sword principle and swordsmanship. Therefore, he had also made some progress in the way of the sword. Now, he had broken through to the 3rd realm of the way of the sword and evolved everything. Chapter 33-37, Swordsmanship and Divine Arts. The 3rd level of Tao is common among the principles. Most principles masters have reached the 3rd level of Tao. Only a few weaker principles masters are still at the 2nd level. Now that you have reached the 3rd level of sword principle, if you fight with principles masters in the future, you won't be at a disadvantage. Now that you've made a breakthrough in sword principle, how about your swordsmanship? How are the sword techniques you created? Temporal Temple Master looked at Jian Wushuang. The 7 sword techniques of the Wushuang Sword Manual have been improved. Although they are not the best among the unique skills created by the principles master, they are not weak, Jian Wushuang said. That's right. Temporal Temple Master nodded slightly. Although your 7 sword moves were created when you were weak, this sword move is quite complete. It involves all aspects and can be improved continuously. Moreover, this sword move of yours can be combined with the space-time principles. It's already very rare that you can use the space-time principles perfectly. Jian Wushuang also smiled, then he said, Temple Master, you asked me to try to integrate the space-time divine skill into these 7 sword techniques. I've tried my best. Blood Azura has integrated the first move of the space-time divine skill, the heaven-designated skill, and the second move of the space-time divine skill, Kanyang, which is part of the unparalleled sword. If you have problems with this website, please continue reading your novel on our new website myboxnovel.com. Thanks, manual I created. Oh! Temporal Temple Master's eyes lit up. Show me what you've got. Without hesitation, Jian Wushuang waved his sword in the open space of the manor. Whoosh! The sword swept across, and a scarlet sword shadow burst out. The sword shadow was like the setting sun, its red light illuminating the world. However, the setting sun was obviously incomplete. The peerless sword technique, the setting sun, Wang. The sword shadow swept across the void in front of him, instantly creating a large space ripple. This space ripple was filled with a red light. Following that, the scarlet sword shadow directly exploded. Rumble, an endless killing power swept out, a huge spacetime storm instantly formed. The second move of the spacetime divine art, spacetime annihilation. Under this sword move, the power of spacetime annihilation was completely unleashed, and the power was earth-shaking. When the Temple Master saw this scene, the light in his eyes became even brighter. When the spacetime annihilation completely dissipated, the Temple Master looked at Jian Wushuang again. Yes, your sword skill is powerful, and the sword skill combines spacetime annihilation. The two complement each other and are much stronger than your own pure spacetime annihilation. Most importantly, the hidden sword skill of spacetime annihilation makes it impossible to guard against. When I created this sword skill, I only wanted to integrate spacetime storm into it. After mastering spacetime annihilation, I wanted to integrate spacetime annihilation into this move. Although I spent a lot of effort, I still succeeded, Jian Wushuang said with a smile. Space-time divine skill was the most powerful divine ability created by the Temporal Temple Master. Now, Jian Wushuang had directly integrated this divine ability into his sword skill, which made the Temple Master praise him greatly. It's a pity that I have only successfully integrated time-space annihilation into the first move of Setting Sun. However, although I have mastered the fourth move of the time-space divine skill, time-space illusion kill, I still can't integrate it into the life and death instant that I created, Jian Wushuang said. Among the 7 sword moves of the Wushuang Sword Manual, the life and death instant was the most terrifying burst of speed in an instant. It was a strike that could kill the opponent without giving the opponent a chance to react. Not only did this strike need to burst out with terrifying speed, but it also needed to carry a shocking power that could directly kill the opponent. The fourth move of the Spacetime Divine skill was called Spacetime Illusion Kill. Jian Wushuang had mastered this move in the past 300 years, and this move also needed to burst out with terrifying speed to kill the opponent in an instant. It was exactly the same as the instant of life and death, so the two could naturally be combined. After Jian Wushuang mastered the Spacetime Illusion Kill, the Temple Master had reminded him to try to integrate the Spacetime Illusion Kill into the instant of life and death. Jian Wushuang did the same, but after all, there was too much time, and it was not effective yet. Don't worry, the Spacetime Divine skill is, after all, my painstaking work over the years. Every move is very impressive. If you casually integrate it into your own sword skill, wouldn't it make the divine skill I created too useless? The Temple Master said with a smile. Jian Wushuang smiled. It was true that Spacetime Divine skill was created by Temporal Temple Master himself. It was already amazing that he could integrate 2 divine abilities into his swordsmanship in such a short period of time. He had just mastered the Spacetime Illusion Kill. It was indeed too fast for him to integrate it into his swordsmanship. Little guy, it has been 300 years. Your divine power should have recovered to its peak, Temporal Temple Master suddenly asked. It has completely recovered. Jian Wushuang nodded. Because of the backlash of the power given by Bloodwave, he could not condense his divine power during the past 300 years. He had been in a weak state, but after 300 years, he finally began to recover. Now, his strength had recovered to its peak. After your divine power has recovered, have you sensed any signs of a breakthrough? Temporal Temple Master asked again. No. Jian Wushuang his head with a bitter smile. His divine power had long reached the limits of the immortal saint, and he had completely mastered the spacetime principles. His sword principle had already reached the 3rd realm. If it were an ordinary person, they would have broken through long ago, but he showed no signs of a breakthrough at all. It's indeed not easy to break through to the principles master level at the perfect life level. As far as I know, your master Xian Yi took a long time to break through to the principles master level. When he finally broke through, he had already fused 3 principles, Temporal Temple Master said. What? Jian Wushuang was his master had fused 3 principles to become a principles master? Like his master, he was a perfect life form. Could it be that he had to wait until the 3 principles were fused before he could break through? But that was too far away. I don't know the details. You don't have to be too impatient. The more impatient you are, the harder it will be for you to break through. Everything will be fine when the time comes, Temporal Temple Master said. I will follow your instructions, Temple Master. Jian Wushuang nodded repeatedly. Well, 300 years have passed. It's time for me to leave and go to the universe battlefield. But before I leave, there are some things I have to explain to you. Temporal Temple Master smiled. Chapter 33-38, Inspector in the Magnificent Palace. Many high-level experts of the Temporal Temple had gathered together. Although Jian Wushuang was not one of the high-level experts of the Temporal Temple, because of the battle on Sohar Island and his explosive power, he had gained a very high among the of the Temporal Temple. In addition, over the past 300 years, Jian Wushuang had cultivating by the side of the Temple Master. This kind of treatment had never been given to anyone since the creation of the Temporal Temple. It was clear that Jian Wushuang's position in the Temporal Temple Master's heart was very high, therefore, Jian Wushuang also had a place in the temple. The Temporal Temple Master sat on the throne at the top and looked down at the people below. I have been adventuring in the universe battlefield all year round. This time, I only came back temporarily. I plan to go to the universe battlefield again soon. And before I leave. Bai Xing, the Temple Master shouted. Palace Master. Temple Master Bai Xing immediately stood up. When I am adventuring in the universe battlefield, you will still be the acting Temple Master of the Temporal Temple. You will be in charge of all the matters in the Temporal Temple, the Temporal Temple Master said. Yes. Temple Master Bai Xing nodded respectfully. Ba Kang, you will still be the supervisor of the palace and assist Bai Xing in. If you have problems with this website, please continue reading your novel on our new website myboxnovel.com. Thanks. Managing the Temporal Temple Master said. Yes, Master. He accepted the order. Phosphorescence, Temporal Temple Master continued to issue some more appointments, which were basically the same as before. In the end, Heavenly Sword Marquis, Temporal Temple Master suddenly said. Jian Wushuang was stunned, and the surrounding people all looked at Jian Wushuang. Temple Master. Jian Wushuang walked forward. Heavenly Sword Marquis, although you are only an immortal saint, your strength has long surpassed that of an ordinary Principal's Master. I now appoint you as the 6th Inspector of the Temporal Temple. Do you agree? Temple Master said. Inspector. Jian Wushuang was shocked. He had been in the Temporal Temple for so many years, so he knew a little about the positions of the higher-ups in the temple. Temple Master and Inspector were undoubtedly at the top and held great power. As for the Inspector, he was under the supervisor and also had great power. He was also one of the highest-ranking officials in the Temporal Temple. In terms of status and power, he was higher than many Principal's Masters in the 2 or even 3 Void Realms. Moreover, there had only been 5 Patrol Masters before, but now the Temporal Temple Master had appointed him as the 6th. Jian Wushuang was a little stunned. He could not help looking around at the LH opal around him. Sure enough, the surrounding Principal's Masters looked at him strangely. There were some strange emotions in their eyes. The Principal's Masters immediately communicated with each other secretly. The Temple Master wants Heavenly Sword Marquis to be an inspector. An inspector has a lot of power. Usually, only experts in the 4 Void Realms and above will be appointed. As for Heavenly Sword Marquis, although his performance in the previous battle was amazing, everyone knows that he used external forces. As for his own strength, he is still far from being appointed as an inspector, right? You can't say that. After all, in the previous battle, even without external help, the Heavenly Sword Marquis' combat strength was still at the 3rd level of the Void Realm. Moreover, he was only an immortal saint, and his talent and potential were so great. Now, it has been 300 years since that battle, and he has been cultivating by the Temple Master's side. Perhaps he has already reached the 4th level of the Void Realm? It's possible, but he's still too young and inexperienced. It's still too early for him to become an inspector and become the highest-ranking official of the Temporal Temple. The Principal's Masters discussed quietly and had their own opinions on the appointment of the Temporal Temple Master. As for Jian Wushuang himself, he knew his own limits. He immediately said, Temple Master, let's not talk about whether I'm qualified to be an inspector. I've only been in the Temporal Temple for a short period of time. I'm afraid it's not appropriate for me to be an inspector without much contribution to the Temporal Temple. It's not a problem for you to be an inspector with your strength. As for your experience and contribution, you can slowly accumulate them in the future. I said that you're qualified to be an inspector, so naturally you're qualified. You don't have to worry too much. I'll ask you if you're willing to be an inspector. Temporal Temple Master looked down. There was a hint of deep meaning in his eyes. Jian Wushuang was obviously still hesitant, but when he noticed the profound in the Temple Master's eyes, he stopped thinking and said, I do. Well, from today on, you are the 6th Inspector of the Temple. The Temple Master smiled. He continued, Inspector, you have a very high position in the temple and your position is extraordinary. You will fight for the temple directly. In the divine beginning realm, if there is a fight between the temple and the experts from other forces, the inspector will deal with it immediately. Although your strength has reached the required level, the enmity between you and the three saint realms is too deep to be resolved. In the future, when you fight for the temporal temple, you will inevitably have to deal with the three saint realms again. In order to prevent the three saint realms from using any tricks against you in the future, here is a token. Keep it well. The temporal temple master waved his hand. A token emitting a special spacetime fluctuation was thrown towards Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang took the token and held it in his hand. He asked in puzzlement, "Temple Master, what is this token?" "This token is a life-saving token that I personally refined. It can save your life. As long as I have this token, I can guarantee that no one in the divine beginning realm can really kill you," Temporal Temple Master said. His words were filled with absolute confidence. He did have such confidence. As a ruler-level expert, he was proficient in the principles of spacetime. He was definitely the best at using the principles of spacetime in the divine beginning realm. With such high attainments in spacetime, the life-saving token he refined contained special spacetime techniques. Although it did not have the ability to attack, it was definitely enough to save his life. Even if a master-level expert from the outside world arrived, Jian Wushuang could still escape with this token, let alone the fact that a master-level expert from the outside world had yet to arrive at the divine beginning realm. Therefore, the Temple Master did not show any fear even though he knew that the three saint realms were backed by the power of the will of heaven. He also knew that the power of the will of heaven could possibly allow a master-level expert from the outside world to arrive at the divine beginning realm. He dared to protect Jian Wushuang's real trump card. In the divine beginning realm, although Temporal Temple Master could not be said to be truly invincible, no one could stop him if he wanted to leave. Chapter 33-39. He was flattered. Translator. Upon hearing the words of the Temple Master and looking at the token in his hand, Jian Wushuang was not only pleasantly surprised, but also flattered. At this moment, the hearts of the Principal's masters were also surging. The Temple Master has personally refined 2 life-saving tokens. As far as I know, the Temple Master has refined 2 of them before. One of them has been used a long time ago, and the other one is left in the Temporal Temple in case anything happens. The Temple Master has also warned us not to use this token unless the Temporal Temple is in a life-or-death situation. It's like this. One of the tokens Lord Temple Master refined was used as one of our trump cards, but now Lord Temple Master has refined one for Heavenly Sword Marquis. Previously, he asked Heavenly Sword Marquis to cultivate by his side for 300 years, and then appointed him as an inspector. Now he has given him a life-saving token. I'm afraid even Lord Temple Master's personal disciple won't be able to get this treatment. Temple Master, aren't you favoring Heavenly Sword Marquis too much? Many Principal's masters present thought that Temporal Temple Master was favoring Jian Wushuang too much. That was great. Indeed, Temporal Temple Master had been teaching Jian Wushuang since he returned to the divine beginning realm. Now that he was going to the universe battlefield, he also left some trump cards for Jian Wushuang. Just like, if you have problems with this website, please continue reading your novel on our new website myboxnovel.com. Thanks. Temporal Temple Master's return. It was purely for Jian Wushuang's return. Heavenly Sword Marquis, remember, the token I'm giving you now is extremely difficult to refine. I can only give you this one token at most to save your life. If you use it, there won't be a second one. So, unless it's a life-or-death situation, don't use this token easily, Temporal Temple Master specially warned. Yes. Jian Wushuang nodded immediately. Oh, one more thing, Temporal Temple Master said. He flipped his palm and a purple gold command flag, which was emitting dense space-time power, appeared in his hand. When I left the Sohar Island, I brought this heavenly golden flag back. It's a top-tier treasure in space-time and has great power. I used it many times when I was adventuring in the universe battlefield. However, I already have a golden sky painting flag, so it's useless now. Now, I'll give this golden sky painting flag to you. I hope you can use its power as soon as possible. With that, Temporal Temple Master waved his hand and threw the golden sky painting flag to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang took it, but his mind was in a daze. He was surprised by Temporal Temple Master's arrangement today. First, he appointed Jian Wushuang as an inspector, gave him a life-saving command talisman, and now he gave him the golden banner that he had gotten from Green Rock Master on Sohar Island. It was equivalent to completely spoiling Jian Wushuang. Course, Jian Wushuang was flattered. The surrounding principal's masters looked at Jian Wushuang with completely changed expressions. Although they had seen Temporal Temple Master's preference for Jian Wushuang, they had only felt a little bit of emotion. Now that Temporal Temple Master had given him the heavenly golden banner, these principal's masters could no longer calm down. They were more or less envious, even jealous. Yes, when a person who was just a little kid in their eyes had suddenly become their equal, or even higher than them, and had obtained all kinds of resources and treasures that drove them crazy, of course, they would be jealous. Jian Wushuang also saw all of this jealousy. He looked at the temple master and saw the faint smile on his face. Jian Wushuang immediately understood. The temple master has lived for so many years, and he has always been watertight in dealing with things. He should have known that if he gave me the life-saving talisman and the golden banner in front of so many people, it would definitely attract the jealousy of others. It would bring me a lot of trouble in my future position as an inspector, but the temple master still did it. Jian Wushuang understood. In fact, Temporal Temple Master could have given him the life-saving command talisman and the golden sky painting flag. After all, he had been cultivating by Temporal Temple Master's side and had had opportunities, but Temporal Temple Master did not give them to him back then, but now, he had given them to him in front of so many people. Jian Wushuang could guess the meaning behind it. Temple Master wants to train me. He doesn't mind giving me more obstacles in the Temporal Temple. If I can't even pass this small obstacle, how can I compete with the 3 Saint Realms in the future? Not to mention that I might face a ruler-level expert from the outside world in the future, Jian Wushuang murmured, but at the same time, he had questions. Because under normal circumstances, to make things difficult for the younger generation, or even to deliberately arrange some obstacles to temper the other party, this kind of behavior, usually only in the training of their own successors, that's why I did it. Is the Temporal Master doing this, to train him to be the next Temporal Master? Maybe it's possible, Jian Wushuang thought. He knew that the divine beginning realm was no longer attractive to the Temporal Temple Master. The reason why the Temporal Temple Master came back every once in a while was because he was worried about the Temporal Temple. After all, the Temporal Temple had a deep foundation, however, there were too few experts. Once they lacked a master-level battle strength like him, it would be difficult to guarantee their safety. Take the battle on Sohar Island as an example. If Temporal Temple Master had not arrived in time, the outcome of that battle would have been quite tragic. Because of this, Temporal Temple Master had never ventured into the deepest part of the universe battlefield. Actually, with his strength, he could have gone to the central region of the universe. That place was the paradise for experts like him. Under this premise, if he could cultivate an heir with the strength of a ruler who was qualified to intimidate hundreds of millions of experts in the divine beginning realm, he would not have any worries and could go to the depths of the universe directly. He could even go for tens of millions of years without coming back. Because as long as there was a ruler, the Temporal Temple could ensure his safety. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and felt bitter. Well, I've told you what I need to tell you. I'll leave the Temporal Temple to you. Ha ha. The laughter of the Temporal Temple Master echoed in the temple. He slowly disappeared from everyone's sight and soon disappeared completely. Chapter 3340, Patrol Squad Transdata, Farewell Temple Master. Many experts in the hall respectfully sent Temple Master off. After Temple Master disappeared completely. Alright everyone, Temple Master has already left for the universe battlefield, and our space-time shrine is still the same as before. Everyone, carry out your duties and leave. Palace Master Baixing waved his hand, then he said, B.A. Kang, Heavenly Sword Marquis, you two stay here. The experts in the temple left one after another. When they left, they glanced at Jian Wushuang a few more times, with strange emotions in their eyes. Soon, only Jian Wushuang, Temple Master Bai Xing, and Ba Kang were left in the temple. Heavenly Sword Marquis, congratulations on becoming the 6th inspector of our temporal temple. You also received the life-saving token and the golden sky painting flag from Temple Master. Temple Master Bai Xing looked at Jian Wushuang with a smile. Heavenly Sword Marquis, you are really lucky to be valued so much by the Temple Master. He even gave you a life-saving token and a golden sky painting flag. To be honest, even I am envious of these two things. Ba Kang also smiled. You too, don't you see that the Temple Master seems to have other intentions? Jian Wushuang asked. If you have problems with this website, please continue reading your novel on our new website myboxnovel.com. Thanks. Of course. Ba Kang nodded. It's possible that the Temple Master wants to groom you as his successor. Of course, he may have other motives. As for why, I can't figure it out, Temple Master Bai Xing said. Yes, the Temple Master has always been unpredictable. Now that he deliberately gave you the life-saving command talisman and the heavenly golden banner in front of so many people, he must have his own plans. But these plans shouldn't be bad for you, Ba Kang added. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang could only shrug his shoulders helplessly. Ba Kang, you are the supervisor of the temporal temple, and Heavenly Sword Marquis is now your direct subordinate. Tell him something about the supervisor first, Temple Master Bai Xing said. Okay. Ba Kang nodded slightly and looked at Jian Wushuang. The inspector has a very high position in the temporal temple and is responsible for external battles. Under normal circumstances, it should be an expert of the Void Fourth Realm, or at least the Void Third Realm. However, Heavenly Sword Marquis, although you are only an immortal saint, your strength has long reached the Void Third Realm. In addition, you have been cultivating with the Temple Master for 300 years. Even the Temple Master himself said that your strength is not a problem, so it's definitely not a problem. In addition to the position of inspector, there is also a patrol team. Patrol Team Jian Wushuang was stunned. The patrol team is directly under the command of the inspector and fights with him. After all, in the divine beginning realm, although our temporal temple is aloof from worldly affairs, we often fight with some big forces and experts. Once a fight breaks out, the inspector alone will not be enough. We need a large number of experts. A patrol squad consists of 10 principals masters from the second to the first realm of the Void Realm and 100 top-notch immortal saints, Ba Kang said. 10 principals masters and 100 top-notch immortal saints. Jian Wushuang was intrigued. This squad could be considered very powerful in the divine beginning realm. In the divine beginning realm, only first-rate forces could have such a squad of experts. However, for the temporal temple, this squad T was just one of the patrol squads that were usually responsible for battles. One person can lead 10 principals masters and hundreds of immortal saints to battle outside. It's no wonder that the position of the patrol envoy is very high and that he's very powerful, Jian Wushuang thought. Our temporal temple has only had 5 patrol envoys before, so naturally, we only have 5 patrol squads. Now that you've become the 6th patrol envoy, our temporal temple naturally has to arrange a patrol squad for you. However, this patrol squad needs a lot of experts. Even our temporal temple will need some time to gather them for you, Ba Kang said. There's no hurry. I'm just curious. Are all the people in the patrol team members of the temporal temple? Jian Wushuang asked. Of course not. Ba Kang shook his head with a smile. Heavenly Sword Marquis, it's not like you haven't entered the divine hall of the temporal temple before. The divine seats of the experts of the temporal temple are all there. In total, there are only about 1,000 people. How can there be so many experts in the patrol team? After all, a patrol team needs 100 peak saints, not to mention principals masters. 6 patrol teams make up 600 peak saints. Most of the experts in the patrol team are rule masters, but the peak saints are experts recruited by the temporal temple in the divine beginning realm. We pay them and they fight for us. Is that so? Jian Wushuang thought for a moment and asked, Master Ba Kang, how long will it take to gather the patrol team? Under normal circumstances, We can gather a complete patrol team within 100 years, Ba Kang said. That's good. I've been improving my understanding of the principles of time and space with the Temple Master for 300 years, but I rarely have the opportunity to go to the Temporal Temple. Now that the Temple Master has left, I can go to the Temporal Temple to cultivate during the 100 years that the patrol team has been established, Jian Wushuang said. No problem. You can cultivate by yourself. When the patrol team is established, Illinois send a message to you. It doesn't matter if you're in the middle of cultivation. Anyway, we don't have many opportunities to use the patrol team. You can ask them to wait for you as long as they don't wait too long, Ba Kang said. I understand, Jian Wushuang nodded. Soon, Jian Wushuang left the temple and went straight to the Principal's Temple. In the Principal's Temple, where the two principles of space-time and reincarnation had fused, Jian Wushuang sat down alone in the center of the temple. He took a deep breath, looked around, and sensed that the two principles of space-time and reincarnation had slowly fused together. The Principal's Temple. I've been here a few times in the past 300 years, and made a lot of progress. However, I've only stepped into the threshold of fusing the principles of space-time and reincarnation. I only know how to fuse them, but I still need a lot of time to fully fuse them. In the Temporal Temple, I'll need a lot less time. If I'm not mistaken, in about 100 years, I should be able to perfectly merge the space-time principles and the samsara principles. Let's begin. Jian Wushuang immediately fell silent in the fusion of the two principles. Chapter 3341, Principles Fusion. Endless fantasy. Time flew by, and 128 years had passed. In the Principal's Temple, Jian Wushuang was still sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. On the surface of his divine body, the power of space-time and samsara slowly rose. Under Jian Wushuang's guidance, the two powers of principles began to merge. Gradually, they began to merge. Originally, it was extremely difficult to merge the two different principles, which contained different characteristics. But now, with Jian Wushuang's guidance, the two completely different powers of rules gradually began to merge. From the beginning of the merging, the two completely merged into a new whole, without any distinction between them. It's done. Jian Wushuang suddenly opened his eyes, and his eyes were full of surprise and joy. From being inspired by the complete cycle of heavenly Tao in the Bloodwave Temple, he had stepped into the threshold of the integration of the two rules. In the past 300 years, he had made continuous progress, and the integration of the two principles was getting deeper and deeper. He had completely entered the threshold. Now, after 128 years of cultivation in the Principal's Temple, he had finally perfectly integrated the space-time principles and the samsara principle. Now that the two principles were perfectly fused, Jian Wushuang could use the, if you have problems with this website, please continue reading your novel on our new website myboxnovel.com. Thanks, power of the two different principles at the same time. At the same time, he immediately sensed that after the principles were fused, he had gained another complete power of will. He had gained another complete power of will. Power of will. I had already gained one when I mastered the space-time principles. Now, because of the fusion of the two principles, I have gained another power of will. Together with the life divine power, it is equivalent to one power of will. This is equivalent to 3 powers of will. Moreover, when I use the heaven cleaving skill, it is enough to provide me with 1 power of will. This is equivalent to 4 powers of will. Jian Wushuang clenched his hands. He was extremely excited in his heart. Grasping 4 portions of the power of will was something that only void 4th-level experts possessed. Although he was only an immortal saint, when he went all out, he could completely erupt with power that was not inferior to the power of the void 4th level. Moreover, this was only the basic power. An expert and a principles master did not completely rely on the power of will to display his true battle strength. He still had many other methods. For example, the use of the power of principles, such as absolute arts, treasures, secret skills, and so on. Jian Wushuang was absolutely confident in these aspects. It's a pity that although I've made great progress over the years, I still haven't crossed the bottleneck in the reincarnation principles. Jian Wushuang frowned. Previously, in the Bloodwave Temple, through the complete heavenly Tao cycle, his comprehension of the reincarnation principles had also greatly improved. He had reached the limit of the immortal saint and was only one step away from completely mastering the reincarnation principles. However, after all these years, he had already fused the two principles of time and space with the samsara principles. However, he had encountered a bottleneck in the samsara principles and had not been able to take the last step. Otherwise, he would have been able to obtain another portion of the power of the will. Naturally, his strength could also be stronger. Although I have not completely mastered the samsara principles, there is no need to be too anxious. If I am anxious, it will be harder to break through. Everything will be natural. In addition, I previously obtained a samsara bead from the Light King. It is said that with this samsara bead, I can enter the samsara heaven realm to cultivate. I can also take a look at the samsara heaven realm when I have time. Jian Wushuang stood up with a smile. He walked out of the hall. After walking out of the hall, Jian Wushuang took out a message token. This message token belonged to B.A. Kang. Jian Wushuang was now the 6th inspector of the Temporal Temple, under the command of B.A. Kang. Of course, he had a message token. When he was still in the Principal's Temple fusing the two rules, B.A. Kang had sent a message to him saying that the patrol team had been set up and was waiting for him to go. However, he was at the critical stage of fusing the two principles at that time. He just replied and did not pay attention to it. It had been 30 years since B.A. Kang had sent him a message. In other words, after the patrol guards had been set up, they had been waiting for him to enter the ranks for 30 years. Now that he had fused the two rules, he naturally could not delay any longer. After receiving Jian Wushuang's message, B.A. Kang immediately found him. Heavenly Sword Marquis, you have stayed in the Principal's Temple for 130 years. You have even delayed your appointment to the patrol unit. It seems that you have made some progress, right? B.A. Kang looked at Jian Wushuang with interest. Yes, I have made some progress. Jian Wushuang did not deny it. Have you made any progress? Have you merged the two principles of space-time and reincarnation? B.A. Kang asked curiously. Yes. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly. Really? B.A. Kang was surprised. Most of the experts in the patrol team were recruited from the Divine Beginning Realm, so the patrol team was not stationed on the Sohar Island, but in a hidden place in the Divine Beginning Realm. It was covered by a restriction. After leaving the Sohar Island, B.A. Kang and Jian Wushuang teleported all the way to the camp of the patrol team. Master B.A. Kang, an old man with a child's face and white hair, stood respectfully in front of B.A. Kang and Jian Wushuang. Zhen Tong, this is the new inspector of the Temporal Temple, Heavenly Sword Marquis, B.A. Kang introduced. Zhen Tong, greetings, Inspector. I've long heard of your name. Everyone in the Divine Beginning Realm now regards you as the #1 genius. In the Battle of the Heavenly Marquis, you single-handedly injured the Flame Sword Master and the Sorcerer God. It's truly shocking. Zhen Tong Master looked at Jian Wushuang with a dazzling light in his eyes. He kept complimenting Jian Wushuang. You're too kind, Zhen Tong Master. Jian Wushuang greeted him with a smile. Zhen Tong Master is a member of the Temporal Temple. He is responsible for many of the recruitment of the patrolling guards. From now on, you can rest assured that he will handle some simple matters in the patrolling guards, B.A. Kang said. Okay, Jian Wushuang nodded slightly. Alright, Zhen Tong, I've brought your patrol envoy here. I'll leave the rest to you. I'll take my leave first, B.A. Kang said. Yes, sir. Zhen Tong was extremely respectful. Thank you, Lord B.A. Kang. Jian Wushuang also expressed his gratitude. B.A. Kang immediately turned around and left. Zhen Tong stood in front of Jian Wushuang and said, Sir, our patrol team has 10 Principals Masters and 100 Peak Saints in the camp. Would you like to meet them and greet them first? Sure, you can gather them first, Jian Wushuang instructed. Chapter 3342, Master True Eyes. In the huge camp, there were many towering palaces or lofts standing tall. At this moment, in one of the lofts, 3 figures sat upright by the side of a long table, casually eating and drinking. The two of you, it has already been so long since our patrol unit was established. Why hasn't that patrol inspector shown up yet? One of them asked. Who knows? The other middle-aged man curled his lips. I heard that this patrol envoy is the Heavenly Sword Marquis who started that shocking battle over 400 years ago. In that great battle over 400 years ago, although this Heavenly Sword Marquis is only an immortal saint, his strength is no less than that of the three void realms. Moreover, his methods are endless and extraordinary. In the end, he even fought a Saint Realm Master head-on and even heavily injured a Saint Realm Master. It's simply inconceivable. Seriously injuring a Saint Realm Master? You believe that? The old man whose eyes were slightly glowing with white light sneered, this Heavenly Sword Marquis is nothing more than a little fellow who got lucky. He's young and full of vigor. Although he has some talent, if one were to say that his strength is really that amazing, I wouldn't believe it even if you beat him to death. Pure Eye Master. That Heavenly Sword Marquis combat strength was also the one who heavily injured the Flame Saint Master and the Sorcerer God. Many people saw it with their own eyes, which is why it caused such a commotion. If you have problems with this website, please continue reading your novel on our new website myboxnovel.com. Thanks. Since so many people have verified it, there's definitely nothing wrong with it, the middle-aged man said. Even if that Heavenly Sword Marquis really heavily injured the Flame Saint Master and the Sorcerer God in that battle, he must have used some special trump cards and methods. This can only mean that he had a fortuitous encounter. However, I don't believe that he can use such a trump card a second time. Master True Eyes, whose eyes were glowing with white light, did not think much of it. That's true. The middle-aged man smiled. However, ever since that battle, Heavenly Sword Marquis has made a name for himself. His current position in the Temporal Temple is extraordinary. I've even heard that even the Temple Master holds him in high regard and even favors him. The position of Inspector was appointed by the Temple Master himself. No one can say for sure what such a person will achieve in the future. We'd better behave ourselves under him and not offend him. What's there to be afraid of? No matter what, he's just an immortal saint. Do you really take him seriously? Master True Eyes was still disdainful. Hearing this, the middle-aged man and the other principal's master looked at Kakother. The two could only smile helplessly. At this moment, a peak saint walked in front of the Master True Eyes and the other two. He said respectfully, "My lords, Lord True Eyes has ordered me to inform the three of you that the patrol envoy has arrived at the camp. He wants you to meet him immediately." OHP. The three principals' masters beside the table were moved. We were just talking about him. Who would have thought that he would arrive in the blink of an eye? The middle-aged man said as he stood up. Since the patrol envoy has arrived, the three of us should go and see him first. The other principal's master also stood up. However, Master True Eyes did not make any movements. Master True Eyes, what are you? The middle-aged man looked over in puzzlement. Humph, this Heavenly Sword Marquis made us wait for him for such a long time. Now that he has arrived, we have to go and see him with just a casual sentence. Who does he think he is? Master True Eyes snorted coldly. Master True Eyes, it doesn't matter whether you think highly of Heavenly Sword Marquis or not, he is still an inspector and our superior. If he wants to see us now, if we don't go, we will be disobeying orders. Although we are not at the stage of a great war, it is not a small crime to openly disobey orders in the camp. The middle-aged man said with a frown. That's right, Master True Eyes. No matter what, let's go and see him first. The other principal's master added. If you want to go, go ahead. I don't intend to go anyway. If he asks, just say that I'm drunk. Let's see what he can do to me, Master True Eyes said coldly. The middle-aged man and the other principal's master looked at each other helplessly. They also knew that Master True Eyes was a proud man because he was extremely talented and had grown up to be a principal's master of the three void realms. Moreover, he was very strong among the three void realm. He only believed in strength and what he saw. In his eyes, Jian Wushuang was just a little guy, and he was just an immortal saint. As a principal's master of the three void realms, he could not kowtow to an immortal saint. Therefore, when he first learned that Jian Wushuang was the patrol inspector, he felt extremely uncomfortable, not to mention that Jian Wushuang had kept them waiting. Now, He was even more dissatisfied with Jian Wushuang. In that case, the two of us will leave first. The middle-aged man and the other principal's master stopped persuading him and immediately went to see Jian Wushuang. In the open space in the center of the camp, the experts of the patrol team had already lined up in an orderly manner. There were 100 peak saints in a row of 20, forming a total of 5 rows. The principal's masters were standing at the front. At this moment, both the immortal saints and the principal's masters were staring at Jian Wushuang, who was standing at the front, with different gazes. At the same time, many peak saints were secretly discussing among themselves. He is Heavenly Sword Marquis. Yes, that's him. He is the undisputed #1 expert on the true saint list and the strongest immortal saint in the history of the divine beginning realm. It is said that in the battle more than 400 years ago, he fought head-on with many principal's masters in the saint realm without being at a disadvantage. In the end, he even fought with the masters of the saint realm. So many top experts of the 3 saint realms couldn't do anything to him. Heavenly Sword Marquis, he's my idol. I wish I could be half as powerful as him. Half? I'll be satisfied as long as I have 1/10 of his strength. The immortal saints chatted and did not conceal their admiration for Jian Wushuang at all. Indeed, the principal's masters might feel a little uncomfortable after hearing about Jian Wushuang's battle record, because the principal's masters had always been far above the immortal saints since ancient times. However, Jian Wushuang, the immortal saint, was an exception. Not only could he stand on equal footing with them, but he was even stronger than many principal's masters. However, the immortal saints in the divine beginning realm were not dissatisfied with Jian Wushuang at all. They even worshipped him more and more, feeling that Jian Wushuang had helped them, the immortal saint. This made the principal's masters not dare to look down on them in the future. Chapter 3343. Published at the 4th of April, 2022, 2:39 and 28 seconds AM. Chapter 3343, 3343. Chapter 3343. Suppression. Jian Wushuang crossed his hands behind his back and looked indifferently at the experts in front of him. Suddenly, his expression changed. He asked, Master True Eyes, shouldn't the patrol team be composed of 10 principal's masters and 100 peak saints? I have seen the 100 peak saints, but why do I only see 9 principal's masters and 1 more random guy? Well, Master True Eyes looked at the principal's masters around him and frowned. Inspector, I've asked my men to inform them. Everyone should have arrived by now, but I don't know why he didn't come. I'll send a message to him now. Master True Eyes was about to send a message. The middle-aged man who had been drinking with Master True Eyes stood up and said, Inspector, Master True Eyes is drunk. Oh, drunk. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and found it funny. Although good wine could make people drunk, in the divine beginning realm, any cultivator who was slightly stronger could freely control their drunkenness, especially when they had reached the level of principal's master. With a thought, they could make their drunkenness disappear completely. The bottle of wine was enough to make a principal's master lose consciousness completely. He did not even know if there was such wine in the divine beginning realm, so how could Master True Eyes be drunk? Even if he was really drunk, it was probably on purpose. Inspector, this Master True Eyes is too presumptuous. I'll bring him here now, said Master True Eyes. No need. Jian Wushuang waved his hand. Since this Master True Eyes is unwilling to come to see me, I'll go and see him. You're willing to see him, sir? Master True Eyes was stunned. Lead the way, Jian Wushuang said with a smile. Master True Eyes said nothing more and led Jian Wushuang to the attic where Master True Eyes was. As for the principal's masters of the patrol team, they looked at each other and immediately followed. Let's go and take a look. The Master True Eyes doesn't listen to the order of the patrol master. This is going to be a good show. If were the patrol master, I would definitely teach him a good lesson. While discussing among themselves, the peak saints also followed suit. Soon, Jian Wushuang arrived in front of the attic. Patrol master, this is the residence of the Chloride master. He should be in the attic now, Master True Eyes said. Jian Wushuang glanced at the attic and sensed the aura of Master True Eyes. He immediately said coldly, "Master True Eyes, come out. Do you want me to invite you in personally? Who is it?" A dissatisfied voice sounded, and then Master True Eyes walked out of the attic with a red face and a smell of alcohol. But on the surface, it seemed that Master True Eyes was really drunk. "True Eyes, how dare you ignore the order of the inspector?" He stared at Master True Eyes coldly and shouted. "Inspector? Who?" "Him." Master True Eyes looked like a drunkard. He glanced at Jian Wushuang from the corner of his eyes and then burst into laughter. "Are you kidding me? Isn't he just a young boy at the Saint Realm? How dare you call him an inspector? I don't think him drunk." "You're drunk. How dare you? How dare you disrespect an inspector?" Master True Eyes could not help but shout angrily. In front of everyone in the patrol team, he directly told them that Jian Wushuang was merely an immortal saint. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that this Master True Eyes was deliberately pretending to be crazy, but in fact, he was trying to embarrass Jian Wushuang. "Master True Eyes, right?" Jian Wushuang looked at the Master True Eyes with his hands behind his back. "It's me," Master True Eyes replied with a hint of mockery in his eyes. "Do you know your identity?" Jian Wushuang asked indifferently. "Of course I do. I'm the captain of the 6th Patrol Team of the Temporal Temple," Master True Eyes said. "Then do you know who I am?" Jian Wushuang asked again. "Visit Ria Del. Me for extra chapters." "You. Didn't I tell you that you're just a young boy at the Saint Realm? Yes, you're just an immortal saint. How dare you talk to me? Get out of my way," Master True Eyes scolded. "Good, you're really brave. Now that you know your identity, it's easy to deal with you. Now, as the 6th Inspector of the Temporal Temple, I order you, Master True Eyes, to disobey my orders. Everyone in the camp is publicly disobeying my orders. Immediately suppress and send you to the 8th level of the boundless prison. You'll never be able to get out," Jian Wushuang said coldly. "What?" Jian Wushuang's words shocked everyone around him. The boundless prison was a place used by the Temporal Temple to lock up experts. It was also very famous in the divine beginning realm. There were 9 levels in the boundless prison. Each level had some unbearable torture that could even make people break down. It was extremely terrifying. The 8th level of the boundless prison was only inferior to the 9th level. This was definitely a place that made many people tremble in fear. Now, Jian Wushuang had given the order to lock the Master True Eyes directly into the 8th level of the boundless prison. However, Jian Wushuang was now an inspector, and the Master True Eyes was his subordinate. Jian Wushuang indeed had the right to do so, and he had a reason for it. The Master True Eyes openly disobeyed orders. Just this alone, even if Jian Wushuang wanted to kill him, it was reasonable. Although the Master True Eyes only wanted to show off to Jian Wushuang, he did not really want to disobey orders. However, he did do so. "Heavenly Sword Marquis, what did you just say? You want to suppress me and put me in the boundless prison?" The Master True Eyes was instantly enraged. His eyes were filled with raging anger. As for his drunkenness, it had all dissipated. "What? Are you clear-headed now?" Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. "Does no one understand what I said? Take him down." Thigh. The surrounding principal's masters were at a loss. Even Master True Eyes was stunned, but he did not come forward immediately. "Let's see who dares." Master True Eyes looked around. His aura of the 3 void realms swept across the area. In the end, he looked at Jian Wushuang again. "Heavenly Sword Marquis, aren't you lucky enough to be favored by the Temple Master? Now that the Temple Master has gone to the universe battlefield, how dare you be so arrogant? And you want to suppress me in the boundless prison? Haha, what a joke. Pure I, have been in the Temporal Temple for so many years and have made great contributions. Even Temple Master Bai Xing and Lord Ba Kang have to think twice before suppressing me. Who do you think you are?" The voice of Master True Eyes shook the sky, showing no respect for Jian Wushuang. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang smiled. "If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: You can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.